I'm Sharon Ross with the Capital City Arts Initiative. We're here in the Crowell Boardroom in the Community Center in Carson City, Nevada. And we're with James McCarthy and his Alignment exhibition. So we're going to ask him some questions about the work. James, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. And I just love seeing everything up on all these walls. It looks fabulous.
It's a great show. It's 37 pieces up on the wall, so we'll give you a preview. What's the title of this piece and where did you take the photograph?
This piece is Rays of Light, and I took it in Antelope Canyon and Page, Arizona area. And it was, gosh, I think I was 2018. I went on a trip to sort of the southwestern part of the United States with another friend of mine, and we toured Horseshoe Bend, Antelope Canyon, and this I believe was, I think, the Lower Canyon. And yeah, it was a really amazing place. It's really hard to, I mean, as a photographer, your main goal is kind of to represent or reimagine, let people feel what it was like when you were there. But I got to tell you, this was one of the most amazing places that I think I've ever been, because you can't tell in the picture, but I mean, the way the walls feels, you walk by and it's literally like this close by in certain places, and it's so cool, and the air is just dry and cool, and it's blowing through. And then when you see these rays of light, there is a little bit of a secret there that I learned when I was there, which is, so when you book the photography tour, what they do is they put you in a big group of people. There's probably, I think there was at least 15 of us there, and they stack us all in rows, and then they have people on their knees in the front row, and so we're all sitting with our tripods, all trying to get the same shot. And what they do is it's very crowded because there's other tours going on, and so those tour guides will actually, they're probably around this corner right here, and they stop the traffic and they stop the people for 2 minutes. And then the tour guides basically tell you have 2 minutes to shoot. And what he does is he's standing somewhere out of sight here that you can't see him, but he'll pick up a little bit of the sand off the ground and he'll throw it. And that's when you see those kind of the dust and the ghost-like figures inside the rays. That's where that comes from. And so it's really neat to go a little bit behind the scenes and actually just experience that canyon. Because I didn't get many other shots of actual light coming through here, and the time of day, this is probably, I think it was around 2 p.m., so the sun was really high, and but the light is just magnificent from other pictures I've seen as well at different times of the day. And yeah, that's kind of that picture.
It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing with us. James, talk about, you have these, you don't have, some of them you don't have traditional frames on, like the one right by you with the 2 palm trees. So talk about how you present them.
This particular piece is just on HD Chromolux metal, and it's basically a sheet of metal is what it is, and it gets printed directly on the piece of metal. And this one here is interesting because it's one of those, what's the phrase, the happy mistakes. Originally, this is a black and white picture, and this is the first, when I started experimenting with metal, this is the first one I did for black and white, and I wanted to use a metallic metal versus you can choose a white gloss or a white matte, which I have on a few other ones around. And so I decided, you know what, I want to see what the metallic looks like. And I didn't read the fine print, in all honesty. It was kind of a goof up on my part, which is anything white in the photo basically becomes silver. It kind of masks out. And so this particular image here, which is alongside you, is 2 palm trees from La Jolla, just outside of Scripps Pier. And yeah, it was supposed to be black and white, but it's really unique and interesting.
tell us about landscapes. You have a passion, appears a passion for landscape.
Yeah, I do. I have a passion for landscapes. I think a lot of my style of photography that I've come up with is I just don't want to take a picture to re-represent a moment, but instead I wanted to almost re-represent a piece of art in the traditional sense of artwork, like you're looking at a painting or a pencil sketch. And I find that landscapes, as well as some portraits, really, that's, I guess, when I'm framing things in my head, that's kind of what I'm envisioning. It's like I envision this, maybe this picture here above a fireplace, and so when I'm framing it and composing it, that's kind of how I come up with those visions for it. But this picture here, which I actually just recently took this in end of May in Cocoa Beach, Florida, and this was taken off the Cocoa Beach Pier, and it was at sunset. And I think one of the cool things that, you know, I didn't capture in this picture, but there are these, I can't remember the names of them, certain types of birds that would just fly back and forth, and all of a sudden it was the craziest thing, especially if you've never seen it before, where they just kind of stop, almost float for a second, and then just dive straight down into the water and then pop back up and with a fish. And it was the coolest thing to watch. And so probably sat there for a good 45 minutes, just, you know, trying to watching the birds and stuff. And as the sun was setting down, I just saw this pink haze, like just, it was, that's the thing about the East Coast and the West Coast. And I know this might sound a little strange, but I find the sunsets were a little bit different. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but it's like from the colors and just even the horizon, it felt a little bit different. And so I think we were standing at the end of the pier when I took this shot, and I just, the water was so calm, and it was just short waves, and I could just see this little like pink purple haze right there. And so yeah, I just kind of took a shot there, and this just reminds me, when I look at this, I look into that vista, which, you know, I spent 3-4 days there with my parents and sister, and as well as with Michelle behind the Facebook camera over here. And this here is First Light, and yes, First Light, and it's in the Canyonlands National Park. And this has a great, most of my pictures have interesting stories behind them, and that's one of the things I love about them. For me personally, they all have, you know, different stories. This again was shot with a really good friend of mine, Steve Roy, who's also a photographer, fine art landscape photographer. He tends to like do large panoramas, unlike me. So we have different styles there, and this was great. We showed up at the park, had to have been 11 p.m. the night before, slept in the car, and I'll never forget, I must have woken up, maybe it was 2:33 a.m., you know, just laying back in the front seat trying to get some shut-eye, and I look out the window, and I've never seen the Milky Way as clear as that night. And so we got up really early in the morning, and we sat here, and again, lots of photographers lined up for this shot. But it was just, again, it was one of those really magic moments where it's really hard to capture, as well as just explain what it feels like to watch that sun come up. And this actually, that first time you see that glow, you're just like that's amazing. It reminds you of just how beautiful everything around us is. And this day here also with Steve, but about 2 years later, I think this is 2020. And this is called Morning Curls, and we were just at, I think this is Bandon Beach. We went to a couple beaches in Oregon, and again, we went there at sunrise, and you'd never know by this picture, but we sat in the car probably an hour right before sunrise, and it was pouring rain. And we went down there, and then yeah, the skies broke. Like, it was just majestic. It was still a little windy though, and this is one of the rocks out there. There's a few different rock formations, and I just loved how the curls of the water and stuff. And so this, and the birds flying across, that just was, to me, this kind of really represented like a painting to me, you know, and I just look at it and I can just walk through there into a story. And so that's, for landscapes, for me, that's what it's really about, is about walking into a story, whether it's a real story like I just told, or whether it's something that you escape into. you might have a memory of Bandon Beach, and it might be completely different than my experience, but it triggers that experience for you and connects with you. And so that's kind of what I love about landscapes.
Do you have a preference for black and white photography versus color? I notice you have both.
Yeah, I actually do. I think my heart is in black and white photography over color, but that's how I actually really kind of started. When my old buddy from high school, I mentioned Steve in the past over on the other wall, when him and I kind of reconnected and started shooting more just locally and that type of stuff, one of the things that was my passion was just black and white. Everything was black and white at that time for me. I was like no color at all, and that was probably back 2013. But I think as my photography kind of evolved a little bit and I started trying new things, I did like how some things look better in color. Like a sunset, for example, is way better in color than it ever would be in black and white, even if it was super contrasty. And so that's kind of where I started. That's kind of where my heart is in photography. So this one here, I like in color. I like the warm colors of it, that the yellows bring out, because this actually was taken just right at first light, when I was driving over 80. This is Immigrant Gap Overlook, and the fog. I did turn this into black and white at one point, and it just didn't feel the same way to me. And so there are some pictures, like even the scripts appear down here, which we'll move on to in a few minutes. That one there, I tried to turn to black and white, and it just didn't work for me. It didn't give me that same feeling or same emotion which I was trying to capture in the image. But for the most part, I try to look at things in a black and white world, I would say, first. And that's where this picture here, which has gone through many different iterations. Originally it was in color, and you might see that one on my website titled Serendipity, and then eventually it became black and white, and now it's retitled Twisted Oak, because the idea really, I always saw this picture in the twist of the oak limbs being twisted in very high contrast. Even though in color you actually can see the little green buds on it and everything, so it was early spring in Rockland, California. But this guy I've always wanted it, and I always have seen it in this almost skeletal vision.
James, you titled the exhibition Alignment. Can you talk about your decision to use that word?
Yeah, I mean, literally speaking, the word means to align something, but I think how I kind of perceived the definition of it is looking at my work from when I kind of started getting more serious about doing photography and landscape photography. Back in like 2013, I started basically a lot of kind of black and whites, and I went to color, and I was doing a lot of my own hand framing, and I've kind of the reason I came with alignment was getting myself back in a line to where my roots were, because what I found was throughout the years, especially those years like when we earlier talked about First Light, Razor Light, Antelope Canyon, and National Canyonlands, I was shooting a lot more color, and I kind of, when I started looking at other pictures like this one here that we just talked about, and Joshua, I was realizing that's where my passion is, that's where my heart is. And so this last probably year, I've been trying to realign myself, and I didn't want to call it realignment, and so it's called alignment, in the sense that I am taking my old and my new and kind of putting my passions, kind of aligning them up into a right direction. And so that's kind of what alignment means to me. And in the next photo book that I'm doing, that's what I'm going to try to encapsulate by going from almost beginning kind of to show this realignment or alignment of where I want to be and where I want to continue to be. Everything from the compositions to color versus black and white to straight photography versus an more artistic style of photography. All of that has to do with aligning myself and aligning where my passion and my heart really is. And what it comes down to is how the picture basically connects with me. And if it connects with me on a more artistic level, that's where I want to go. Or if it connects with me on a more just straight photography level, that's kind of where I kind of want to stay too. And so I'm going to kind of catalog or portray that in hopefully future work, so that you'll be able to see, even on my website, hopefully you'll be able to see as I take older stuff off and newer stuff on, you'll be able to see this new path, this new alignment.
James, your pieces have intrigued me, because I think you take, as opposed to just to big vista landscapes, you isolate on particular images within a landscape, and you're taking portraits inside of a landscape. So tell us about your Joshua portrait.
Okay, yeah, I do tend to do that, and I think that's part of my style is not to really shoot wide panoramic big pictures, but to find that element, that subject in that big picture and kind of focus on that. And Joshua Tree is kind of like that. And also I think sometimes you're just walking around, you're looking, and what kind of speaks to you, that's kind of what hones me into sometimes like this Joshua Tree, for example. We travel from Reno or Carson City to Las Vegas quite a bit, and anyone who's done that trip has gone through this little town called Goldfield, Nevada, which is just coolest little town. I love that little town. And one year we went to Goldfield Days, believe it or not. We went there. It was a lot of fun, and on the way back we stopped at the Goldfield Cemetery, because you can look at tons of different tombstones that are out there of this guy died eating paste, and they have some very silly phrases and stuff. It's kind of neat. We were walking around, reading the different headstones and stuff like that, and this Joshua tree just kept standing out, and so I always have my camera with me almost 90% of the time on trips, and so I just started, shooting the Joshua tree from different aspects and different viewpoints. And at that same time, and actually this may have been, I don't see them on the ground. So a time before that we went, and there were a bunch of seed pods that had fallen on the ground. And so I actually took a seed pod and germinated those seeds, and now I have like 80 little tiny Joshua trees at home that came from this particular tree. So there's always a story, like I was saying, with these pictures. But this also kind of represents how some of my, I feel, style changes that have gone on with me personally over the last probably 2, 3, 4 years. And I started looking more at black and white and more high key, more contrast in the picture. And that's something that which you'll see on some of these other pictures down the row here, that I've been experimenting with and stuff. But that is Joshua.
James, thank you very much for bringing your art to CCAI and hanging it here in the Crowell Boardroom in the Community Center.
Well, thank you for having me. It was an honor to put up my work and be able to show it and let other people experience it, and hopefully have stories like I do with all the pictures.
Good. CCIA has 4 galleries in Carson City, this being one of them. We have art in the Carson City Courthouse, art in the Community Development Building, which is our student gallery, and at the Bristlecone Gallery on Western Nevada College's campus. Plenty of free parking at each of these galleries. Do come to Carson City. And we have exhibition videos on our YouTube channel for our Nevada Neighbors Talks and for all the exhibitions we've been doing. And our generous funders will be listed on the following slide. So thank you for watching, and thank you for participating with CCAI.